There's a storm inside almost every startup when the phrase private equity buyout is mentioned. It hits like a chill that runs through the spine, a dread that wakes founders up at night. Why? Because deep down, many startups feel trapped on the edge of losing everything they poured their soul into, swallowed by a world that's suddenly demanding more efficiency, more profit, less patience for dreams. The fear isn't just about money or control. It's about identity, survival, and the gut-wrenching possibility that their vision could be crushed. Imagine building your baby from scratch, countless sleepless nights, blood, sweat, and tears, and suddenly hearing that buyout deal could change the whole game almost overnight. It's terrifying, and the reasons run deeper than you think. Startups live on creativity, on the flexibility to pivot, to fail fast, to try wild ideas without having suits over their heads, measuring every second with a calculator. When private equity shows up, it feels like a cold blueprint descending over the messy art they've made. The messy hires, the chaotic emails, the scrappy late nights, the imperfect MVPs. Suddenly, it's about numbers, margins, returns on investment. Every inefficiency becomes a target. Every experiment that didn't pay off is a scar to cut away. That's the first crack in the foundation of fear, the loss of freedom. No more playing it loose, no more chasing what feels right, but steering toward what's guaranteed. A promise to buy growth quickly, but at the price of urgency, pressure, and survival instincts being replaced by quarterly results. But here's the brutal truth nobody says aloud. The fear startups have isn't completely misplaced. Private equity can indeed bring ruthless heat. It demands laser focus on what counts, slashing what doesn't, and delivering rapid scale or bust. The tension is relentless. For a founder, this is a gut punch, because it conflicts exactly with the soul of a startup, where every risk taken, every failure embraced, is a lesson learned towards something new. Private equity smiles at the past failures only as statistics, as numbers to be wiped clean, losers to be cut from the team, products to be shut down. It's a battlefield between vision and velocity, where the cash-wielding buyer demands speed and predictability over bold bets and unknown frontiers. Now, throw in another layer, the loss of identity. For many leaders, their startup is not just a company. It's their life's work, a spark of rebellion against the status quo, a declaration that things can be different. But private equity buyouts are often seen as surrender or selling out, a quiet death of the dream, replaced by the hum of profit margins and operational efficiency. Employees, investors, even founders start asking quietly, where is the soul of this venture now? The fear here isn't just operational, it's existential. It's about losing the original fire and becoming just another number in someone else's portfolio. And make no mistake, this is real pain because it hits the core of why these startups ever started. To be exceptional, to refuse comfort, to challenge the system that created them. Then there's the sinking feeling about what follows. Massive restructuring, cultural upheaval, and short-term thinking that feels like a sprint to the finish line. Anyone who's been through this knows the scenario. Abrupt changes, key people quitting, handbooks rewritten, and a new leadership tone that whispers, perform or leave. That's the brutal second strike to startups' nervous systems. They know that once the buyout happens, the clock starts ticking louder. The flexibility that once defined them threatens to shatter under relentless pressure to hit ROI targets that can feel cold and unyielding. Morale drops, passion fizzles. The dream isn't just challenged, it's endangered. Yet this fear, this almost primal dread, also holds within it the seed of something powerful. Because what if the story didn't have to end there? What if private equity, rather than being a dark shadow, could actually be a catalyst, a partner that brings muscle and discipline, not just demands and restrictions? What if the fear could be flipped, turned into a weapon, a tool to finally build something greater than fragmented dreams? This isn't a pipe dream. It's a challenge to how everyone thinks about buyouts. And it's the key to unlocking startup transformation that's more than survival. It's thriving, scaling, and redefining what's possible. First, it's essential to realize that private equity is not the enemy. It's a different mindset. Private equity thrives on structure, on operational excellence, on squeezing every ounce of value while creating long-term growth. Startups that succeed after buyouts are those that embrace this reality early. They stop fighting the system and start learning it strategically. They don't surrender vision. They translate it into something concrete, a roadmap that is scalable, sustainable, and built to last beyond the founder's immediate spark. This means becoming obsessive about processes without losing sight of innovation, creating repeatable results while keeping a finger on the pulse of disruptive ideas. Here lies the core secret. Blending the chaos of startups with the discipline of private equity creates a hybrid that's unstoppable. Second, transparency and communication must shatter old myths. The terror of buyouts often comes from the unknown. How decisions might come without warning, how leaders might be replaced, how choices feel ripped from the founder's hands. The reality, the toughest conversations and most brutal decisions only happen when there is full, brutal honesty on the table from both sides. Startups need to cultivate the courage to confront weaknesses, to expose risks, and to demand clarity on expectations from private equity partners. In return, good private equity investors thrive when founders and leaders act as true partners, not just sellers. This partnership mentality breaks down the fortress of fear. It transforms the relationship from takeover to co-creation. Suddenly, what seemed like a trap reveals itself as a powerful alliance ready to elevate. Third, restructuring and efficiency don't have to mean soul destruction. It's a misconception that operational rigor kills culture. The startups that survive and flourish after buyouts embed culture into the new framework. They become fanatical about defining values that go beyond profit: clarity, trust, accountability, growth, and yes, radical innovation. They translate buzzwords into daily actions and make culture as measurable as the numbers on the balance sheet. What's outrageously effective is to map culture as a growth engine, where attention to people is not a distraction, but a serious investment. This approach defies the stereotype of cold, profit-driven buyouts and instead crafts resilient, aligned teams ready to sprint a marathon. Now, for the leaders, the biggest weapon, the one no one talks about loud enough, is mindset transformation. The founder who embraces a private equity buyout must become a different animal, no longer just a visionary builder, but a strategic architect and relentless executor. This means unlearning some habits, but not losing the original fire that sparked the startup. It requires cultivating patience, precision, and the willingness to play a long game. It also means building a network of allies, mentors, advisors, partners that walk alongside through the storm. And this, perhaps more than anything, is the ultimate liberation, the freedom that comes not from resisting change, but from mastering it. Let's talk about one more often overlooked truth. Private equity buyouts can actually liberate startups from their own limitations. Sometimes founders are trapped by their own blind spots, the inability to scale, the hesitation to cut what's not working, or the exhausting cycle of firefighting without strategic clarity. Private equity forces a sharp mirror to those weaknesses, but also injects clarity, capital, and experience. It can lift the weight off founders' shoulders, letting them finally focus on what matters most, building the future rather than battling the present. When approached right, these deals don't end dreams. They turbocharge them. And here's what makes all this resonate with meaning beyond business. This fear around private equity buyouts is really a metaphor for a bigger picture: the constant tension between comfort and growth, illusion and truth, control and freedom. Startups fear losing control because they've been promised freedom that feels more like an illusion. Private equity, harsh as it might seem, pulls the curtain on that illusion and dares to offer real freedom. the freedom forged through discipline, loss, and transformation. The founders who see past the fear, who stand ready to harness this power, awaken a new kind of freedom, one where vision meets execution, where individual brilliance transforms into collective rise. So, for all the leaders watching now, the question isn't about fear, it's about choice. Will the fear of private equity choke the fire, or will it fuel a breakthrough? Will you stay shackled by myths, or step into a new reality where your startup doesn't just survive a buyout, it owns it? This battle is already playing out in boardrooms, deal rooms, and stretch rooms of startups around the world. The rare, the brave, the few who refuse to slow down, those are the ones who rewrite the rules, who open the door to freedom in the most unexpected of places. The terrifying truth is simple. Startups fear private equity not because it's an enemy, but because it demands the truth sometimes too raw to face. But within that raw truth lies the power to build something that endures far beyond the founder's first spark. That power calls to those who dare, leaders who refuse comfort, who live for transformation, who know that to create what's next, sometimes they first must unlearn what came before. This is the path from fear to freedom, the ultimate pivot that only those who burn instead of bend will walk. And the work begins now, today, because the next chapter for startups and private equity isn't written by fear, but by those who choose to master it. Every second spent hesitate is opportunity slipping away. The few who align, who transform, who break with illusions, are the ones who will unleash the future. So don't just watch the storm, become the storm. Own the buyout, transcend the fear, and make the impossible inevitable.